What up, y'all? It's TTR, and today we're gonna be talking about a Pokemon I've been wanting to talk about for a bit that might seriously Mega Evolve in Pokemon Legends ZA. Now that we're done with our overall series, I'm just gonna jump to random Pokemon I think have a proper chance at Mega Evolving. And today, we're talking about Kingambit, but there's a twist on this video. You'll get the twist by the end of it. Kingambit is one of the strongest Pokemon across all Pokemon games at 550 BST, making it honorarily up there with some legendary Pokemon like Ogerpon. Kingambit and Ogerpon have the same base stat total. It is essentially a very rare evolution that people in Unova didn't even get to spot at first. I'm sure Kingambits technically do exist in Unova, by the way. It's just been so rare, it's like mythical. Because remember, point is, Bisharps form little squads with each other and fight over territory. And the more they fight, eventually, one of them rise to the top as a Kingambit. Because Kingambit is such a slow Pokemon, it actually gets slower than Bisharp. Just like a chess piece, right? You imagine it in the back somewhere, actually commanding everything that's going on. So you wouldn't actually know Kingambits where they are in Unova. They'd be hiding in caves and such. Well, hiding is a tough word, but then again, Kingambits, even though they're king figures, they're not honorable kings. They're actually dishonorable. That's the point of their move. What is it? Kowtow Cleave? Is that how you say it? Where it pretty much begs for mercy and then freaking stabs you with its sword. That's a badass. We're gonna start with Pawniard, and you'll see where I'm going with this idea and why I really feel like this Mega Evolution might happen in ZA. So even though Pawniard, Bisharp, Kingambit, they have this chess vibe going on, what they really are more of are like samurai Pokemon, right? Pawniard, that's why in English it's known as the sharp blade Pokemon, because its main thing is it wants to sharpen its blade and fight enemies. It says in its Pokedex entries when it battles, if its blades dull in, the main thing it do is sharpen them quickly. They actually work under a Bisharp. The pecking order of this pyramid scheme is of course a bunch of Pawniards that form to work under a Bisharp. A pack of these Pokemon form to serve a Bisharp boss. Each Pawniard trains diligently, dreaming of one day taking the lead. You got a long way to go, Pawniard. It will fiercely challenge even powerful foes. Any chips in its blades would prove fatal for it. A samurai, their blade is an extension of their body. This is the whole idea behind Pawniard. So now the pecking order starts. Let's go to Bisharp. When a Pawniard is badass enough, it can evolve and grow from 340 BST to a Bisharp. 490 BST. And this is when they're a leader. They're a samurai leader now. It leads a group of Pawniard. It battles to become the boss, but will be driven from the group if it loses. We got a very strict system going on here. If you rise from the Pawniard ranks to become a Bisharp and you're leading Pawniard, you can't lose even once. As in real life, right? A samurai loses once, they're dead anyway. But in this case, if you do survive as a Bisharp after losing, you're kicked out of the group. I suppose that group will just wander off as just Pawniards until someone in their ranks will rise to be a new Bisharp and lead them. But there's no second chances. Blade is life, bro. Look at this sad one. No matter how strong the Bisharp, it's said that if the blade on its head is chipped, it will retire from its position as the boss. It's interesting to note, right? You see it on Kingambit, to spoil a bit into the future. That big sword. It didn't come out of nowhere. Pawniard always had that little axe handle in its head. It was always meant to become something. There's a lot of funny context to Bisharps. Look at this. Bisharp keep an eye on its minions, ensuring none of them ever think of double crossing it. So you gotta think of it as in the wilderness, there's gonna be various gangs of Pawniard, each led by a Bisharp. And the ultimate goal of these Bisharps is to beat up the other gangs and absorb their Pawniards to make their gang bigger. Then they move up the ranks as the stronger Bisharp gangs in the area, while the smaller Bisharp gangs have to hide in the shadows and wait for an opportunity to, assassinate the other Bisharps, absorb theirs and all. But there's a pecking order here. There's the Pawniards with no leader, then there's the Pawniards with a weak Bisharp leader, then there's the Pawniards with a strong Bisharp leader, which have by this point absorbed huge amounts of Pawniard. They're working with like probably 20 Pawniard under them, while the others only like 4 or 5. And this is the lore I wanted to tell you, because this is how it makes sense what happens next. This new mythical step that happens to Bisharp. Mythical in the sense that you would only hear about it through rumors, that there's actually something above a Bisharp if you're living in the Pokemon world, because no one would ever see a Kingambit. And if someone did witness Kingambit, they're probably gonna die right after anyway, so no one lives to tell the tale. The idea is, remember this pecking order? when you get to the top tier Bisharps, who have 20 poniards under them and all, they have obviously defeated a lot of Bisharps in battles before. The more they do this and the more poniards they gather, this is what transforms them into a Kingambit. And this is translated in game in the way of saying that a Bisharp needs to defeat 3 Bisharp that are holding the leader's crest, and that creates Kingambit. The idea is, by the time a Bisharp has been so successful, powerful, and as good as Samurai that it was able to take on 3 other gangs of Bisharps and absorbing all their poniard, that elevates them to being the king piece. Listen, I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but it's survival of the fittest out there. What you'll notice is the Bisharps that become Kingambit only ever achieve this in one way. Not by being honorable, as is very important to samurais, but by being dishonorable. There's no point being nice out there. Only the evil-natured Bisharps can ever become the Kingambit. I'm just painting the story here, right? A lot of what I'm saying is I'm reading between the lines and trying to make it as complete as possible. This is the general idea I get from it. And so, any Bisharp that's become a Kingambit is a samurai king with a whole organization of poniards under them. A Kingambit would probably have a bunch of generals, which would be Bisharps under them. This is why it's interesting the way I've worded this, because you don't find Kingambits in the wild in Scarlet and Violet. You don't just see them sitting around. It really is like they're in the shadows. The only way you can uncover a Kingambit is by evolving it yourself to know it exists. And this pretty much solidifies the story of Kingambit. And this is why it has the ability Supreme Overlord, because it's a Pokemon that really sends its poniards to do its bidding, and if somehow you are actually beating up its poniards, it will come down like the final king piece on a chessboard and is boosted by the fallen poniard army that you've defeated so far. For each poniard you've taken out and made the king come out, he gets 10% stronger. So anytime he pops up, he will get the job done pretty much. So this is the story of Kingambit. And now to talk about taking Kingambit to the next level, Mega Kingambit. Well, I'm here to tell you some plot twist news, which is that I don't think Mega Kingambit is happening. Well, it's hard for me to just say I don't think Mega Kingambit is happening. As you know, my videos are all follow-ups of each other, right? I build an idea and I keep building on this idea more and more. So something I talked about in a previous video is a real controversial idea and take, which is that what Game Freak might start to do is F around with Mega Evolutions. I'll link that video at the end of this, but what I'm suggesting in this video is something different. First, we'll get Mega Kingambit out the way. If Kingambit Mega Evolved, it's over. That 550 BST would go up to 650. I imagine it goes fight or flight samurai mode if we were to Mega Evolve it. Something like, you see, in a samurai fight, what matters at the end, at the very end, right? Of course, there's strategy, sword fighting techniques and all, but when it comes to 2 swords landing, it's whoever is faster and can get the other person, right? So what Mega Kingambit would be is something like it gets rid of all its defenses and all it really has is attack, and that 50 speed skyrockets, so it's a fast Pokemon. And really, it'll die in one hit. If you use a priority move and you're faster, you can kill it, right? As the example I suggested, but it just goes on the onslaught. It could get some kind of ability where the lower its HP, maybe the faster it is. That's a very new take for an ability, right? So maybe they could do that instead of increasing its speed. But the reason I would say it increase its speed is because you gotta put that 100 BST somewhere. It could be something as simple as like the way Unburden works, where after a certain condition your speed is doubled. So maybe when you're under 50% health, your speed is doubled. That's what Mega Kingambit's ability would be. Now, here's why I'm saying that we're not getting Mega Kingambit. And it's because I think Game Freak might do something clever here and interesting, which is, remember I mentioned how Kingambits are really just super Bisharps? This is the idea I'm trying to put forward here. What you might find in Pokemon Legends ZA, again, this is going back to my controversial idea, is you might find the Bisharpite. You might find the potential to make Mega Bisharp. Even though Kingambit exists, this would be a Mega Stone that only works for Bisharp, which is a much different character to Kingambit, because as I've explained, you get that Kingambit evolution by finding the way to survive out there, which is getting into your evil nature and being dishonorable. But Bisharps, so far, they haven't gone to that stage. So it makes sense that the Megastone only works for them. And with 490 BST, if you Mega Evolve the Bisharp, it would be stronger than a Kingambit. This would be an alternate path for Bisharp. It's almost something like, you don't want to become a Kingambit. There's something special there in not discarding that part of yourself. That's the idea I'm trying to put forward here. If you can get an honorable Bisharp that's like working with the human in older times, they would be one of the few who unlocked this Mega Bisharp evolution, which would be a true and more honorable king that would lead Paard. And this is when we get to our next part. Remember I was playing Pokemon X and Y and I was checking out the Parfum Palace? Let me show you something. I'd love to travel 2 years in the future and see how wrong I am in these videos. Or how right I am. You know, usually when I make these theory videos and all, I keep these theories to myself. The Scarlet and Violet hype season was like the first time I've outwardly said my theories. So here I am in Parfum Palace. Y'all remember this place, right? This was made by Louis XIV, who I've made a video talking about some relation to AZ there, which you can check out. But you see, if you're going through the various parts of this place, what you'll find is, look at this. It's a golden statue of a knight who served to protect this palace. These are sword wielders like Bisharps, and in armor, kind of how Bisharps look. And that's something, right? If you had a king, his trusty core circle would be a bunch of protective knights, loyal. Maybe I should move over here. There's a lot of cool paintings and all in this little Palace of Versailles, right? Look what happens when you go upstairs. Look at what you had on the first floor. The humans that protected and served under Louis XIV about 300 years ago. You go to the upper floor and you get to the Pokemon that protected Louis XIV and all, and this whole France kingdom. Bisharps. It's a statue of a Bisharp general that led a legion of Paard. One Bisharp general. Something like the king's trusted right-hand man / right-hand Pokemon. This whole image I painted of the bad Kingambit, even though Louis XIV was strong-willed and savage, did a lot of good, did a lot of bad, he used this guise of absolute power and being stern and all, and had a partner, Bisharp, that he Mega Evolved and did things the right way. This is the Sun King we're talking about. And these are statues dedicated to that legendary Mega Bisharp that he had. That's what I want to say in this video. So if you're playing Pokemon Legends ZA, here he is, the Sun King right there. And look who they've put right beside him. That single Bisharp general. Now you see, Game Freak didn't know this, you know, back when they're making Pokemon X and Y, but this is what they're gonna build with the current lore and all they've set up in this story. You're gonna see much more recent images of the Sun King there, depending on how far back this game is. And they're gonna talk about how he had a Mega Bisharp. It's gonna be a very rare Megastone, but the idea would be something like it's been always kept in the Palace of Versailles here, and a thief would steal the Bisharpite and it would be hanging around Lumio City somewhere. And it's from him that you get the Bisharpite and you can get Mega Bisharp in the games. And the way Mega Bisharp would work is the exact same way I described that hypothetical Mega Kingambit, where it sacrifices everything to be the final moments of that samurai in heat. No defenses, maxed out speed, can it take the victory? The Sun King's Bisharp never became a Kingambit. You could say it's because it didn't exist back then, but no, this is how it's written anyway. Anyhow, that's pretty much it. Make sure to shank that like button. Let me know your thoughts on a Mega Bisharp in the comments below. And I know, bro, I know my ideas are freaking wacky. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.